And it was just like, what a crazy thing to say. You're a professor of poetry at this big institution, and you're just like, people of color aren't doing sonnets? They're not doing
Yeah, like
sonnets?
just say you don't read. Just say
Right,
that.
just say
Just
that.
say
I
that.
would have respected that answer.
Yeah, like
I don't
right.
like it, but I respect that.
Right. I might email you some recommendations after class, but okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're like, what am I going to do? I get it. I also have the things that I prefer. But she was just like, they don't write them.
Like,
Mm.
all right. Well,
Wrong answer, poems. Let's try that one again. Hello, poets of the internet. I'm DeeSoul Carson, and this is Eponymous, an extension of the O Word podcast that is interested in poets, their collections, their title poems, and how they find their ways into our hands. Today's episode is on Resting Bitch Face by Dr. Taylor Byas. Dr. Taylor Byas, PhD, edits for The Rumpus, Jack Leg Press, Beloit Poetry Journal Editorial Board, and the Texas Review Press. Her debut, full length, I Done Clicked My Heels Three Times from Soft School Press, won the 2023 Maya Angelou Book Award, among others. Her second full length, Resting Bitch Face 2025, which we'll be discussing today, is a September pick for the Roxane Gay's Audacious Book Club. She is represented by Noah Gray Rosenweg at Triangle House Literary. Taylor, hello.
hello, hello.
How are we doing?
I'm wonderful. Happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm so happy that you're here. I'm super appreciative. Your new book is in the world now. How do you feel?
It's like exactly a month now, like
Mm.
maybe 2 days past a month,
Hmm.
and it has been good. It's interesting because like the first book came out like almost exactly 2 years ago, and I had no expectations for the first
Mm.
book, and somehow interestingly, I'm like simultaneously more nervous about this one, but then I have these moments where I feel kind of completely detached to it. And I think that's,
Mm.
a symptom more so of just like the state of the world
Hmm.
more
Yeah,
than anything
exactly.
else. And just, things just, not feeling as important as, maybe they would if we were in a better moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about it. I finished reading it yesterday. I was trying to prepare for this interview, and I think it's just so great. I understand what you're saying about like the second book is kind of its own thing. Like there's
Mhm.
that energy around the first book. You're like the debut. Now it's out. Then it's like, oh, I have to do that again. Is
Yes,
that kind of the sensation you have while you were putting it together?
it is. I think one thing that maybe people didn't really tell me was for a lot of people, unless you have just won like a ton of, huge awards and you're someone who just has a lot of eyes on you,
Hmm.
it's very easy for people's like second and, third, fourth books to kind of like not get the same attention as the debut as
Yeah.
well.
A lot of hype around a debut. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of hype around a debut, and then there's just a difference with that second book, and I'm very fortunate that there was still some really great publicity around Resting Bitch Face. But for example, like we didn't get any blurbs for the
Mm.
second book. Like we sent out blurb requests. We didn't get any blurbs for Resting Bitch Face, for
Wow.
example, and they were like, this is actually something that's pretty common with second books, which I didn't
Mm.
know. And so I just think it's so interesting that there are things that happen the second go round that no one really kind of tells you or that you're just not really prepared for.
Hmm.
Um and I know now it's not personal. Like I know those people that we asked were just busy and had
Hmm. Yeah.
10,000 things to do. But sometimes you do take a little personally and your feelings do get hurt and you do
Yeah.
feel
I mean, it's your baby. How could you not?
it's
You
my
know?
baby, right? And of course, no one cares about it likely more than I do, and that's its own thing. But there is a way that I think you have to reshape your expectations for a book after the debut, for sure.
That's fair. I never even thought about like what that because in my head I'm like I keep tabs. I'm like, okay, I want this person to talk on the second book, this person talking on the third book, but that's really actually
Yeah.
really eye-opening. So given that this is eponymous, I did want to start with the title.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, was Resting Bitch Face always like did you always know that's what it was gonna be, or were there like other titles you were also kind of juggling?
So the first version of this book was my dissertation, and
Hmm.
Resting Bitch Face absolutely was not the title.
That's not what you put to
That's
the people
not
at the
what I
PhD.
that's not what I put on there. Don't go look it up, y'all. It's a different title on the dissertation. The title for the dissertation, if I remember correctly, was corruption. And then
Hmm.
the I was in parentheses because I do think that there is something in the collection about the I and the way that it kind
Hmm.
of emerges or kind of breaks out of this mold and moves towards a more autonomous being.
Hmm.
And so that was actually the title. And then we sold it to Soft Skull, and that's actually when we changed the title. And I was so happy that they were like Resting Bitch Face is it because I was kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, I don't know how the press would feel about, having this curse
Hmm.
word in the title. If they're kind of like, oh, that's too much. They were like, no, Resting Bitch Face is
Yeah.
the title. So it actually didn't change until we had gotten with Soft
Mm.
Skull and started talking about it with them. Yeah.
Speaking of that eye that you're talking about, your eponymous poem, Resting Bitch Face, kind of speaks a bit to this phenomena of both being observed and the observer. And I'm wondering if you could speak to more of how you feel that poem represents the collection as a whole.
So that poem came into being because at the height of the pandemic, when masks were like heavily mandated everywhere, I like it occurred to me that men had stopped telling me to smile because I couldn't police my face because I couldn't see it.
Mm.
And so then I got to thinking about this way that, women are not only observed, not only constantly under surveillance, but all of the different ways that we are expected to appear a certain way, expected to behave a certain way, how even as we're going about our days, minding our business, as we're deep in our thoughts, as we're stressed, as we're worried, we're expected to kind of be approachable and welcoming and warm and inviting. And interesting enough, the phrase, resting bitch face is like
Hmm.
this thing that gets like weaponized and thrown at you if you don't appear that way. It's like, this insult. And
Hmm.
so the poem kind of confronts that gaze, which is something that I wanted this book to do. I
Hmm.
wanted this book to be like the stare down, like
Hmm.
that stares back at the sort of watcher until they back down sort of thing. I wanted Resting Bitch Face to go from this insult to this kind of act of
Hmm.
resistance. Like, yes, you've called out my resting bitch face, and now I'm going to look even meaner in your face until you leave me the
Hmm.
hell alone, type of thing. And I think the book is very much engaged in a similar sort of movement. It definitely goes from being watched, poems in which there is a lot of
Hmm.
watching happening. The speaker is being watched. The reader finds themselves in these scenes where then they also find themselves feeling watched.
Yeah.
And then as the book progresses, that speaker emerges more and more. Resting Bitch Face is kind of like right at the center of the book. It's kind of like a hinge point. After that poem, you see the speaker getting more ballsy and getting more
Yeah.
empowered to speak back in
Hmm.
similar ways.
There's definitely this emphasis in the book on performance and presentation that I felt
Mhm.
throughout that I think you're speaking to here. And this it assumes this sort of interpretation of the woman's expression by some external party. A lot of it that we're talking about is like the presence of the male gaze. And I'm just
Mhm.
thinking a lot in this book of just how much the speaker is moving through that, right? It's a book that, ostensibly is dealing with a lot of art,
Mhm.
art pieces, art styles, art techniques.
Mhm.
But it's really kind of the subtext that is tracking this woman's movement through these things. There's this double consciousness happening. Speaking more about the art part, though, for people who haven't read the book yet, the sections of the book are named after different kinds of art making techniques. And so much of the book itself is inspired by various kinds of art. So I'm wondering if you can, this is more of a craft question, can you speak about
Mhm.
your relationship to ekphrasis?
Yes.
Um,
It's my girl. Um, yeah, I was a fiction writer in undergrad,
mm.
and I had it in my mind that I was gonna graduate and go on to write the great novel, and that's hilarious. And
You
at
still
the
can. You still can.
there's still time. There's
It
still
is
time.
poets' time for fiction. It really
No,
is.
I know. I say that as I've like actually started a novel, so
Oh,
just
okay.
like just bear with me. Just bear with me. But at the end of at the end of undergrad, I actually took an ekphrastic poetry class. The entire semester, we were given art and we had to write poems in response and we had to do all these different approaches. And then there was one class in particular where the professor literally, I think it was a folder and we had to like randomly pick a piece of art out of the folder. And
Mm.
I can't remember the name right now, but it's a Rene Magritte painting, and it's just an
Hmm.
egg. It's just a huge egg in a cage. And I was like, what am I supposed to do here? But that challenge of like figuring out a way to enter that art somehow or to have some sort of conversation around that art, I was like, oh, this is fiction in a different way. Like I'm still
Yeah.
telling stories, but in this way that can be, weird and experiment. Not that fiction can't be weird and experimental, but it was just like there's this different obsession with language. There's just this different way of thinking
Yeah. And in
and
a different kind of permission.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, a different way that you can kind of move throughout space and time and things that might not, feel as welcome in fiction. And so I think that was the moment that really unlocked it for me. And so then I switched over to poetry for the master's, for the PhD. It's my main baby now. And so it's important to me because it quite literally is what kind of brought me back to poetry. Is sort of like my central artistic practice. But I also, there's something about ekphrasis, and I'm also now getting back into photography, which is something that like I had an interest in high school. I took a photography
Mhm.
class, and then I just never really kind of came back to it, and am now coming back to it as just something that I'm enjoying doing. I think, there's a lot of kinship between the poet and the photographer in the way that we're kind of asked to look at the world and consider the world. And so I think to be engaged with visual art feels very natural to me.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting bringing that, seeing that you have in the poetry ekphrasis out into the world. I really enjoyed reading Discomfort at the MoMA, not only because I was there when the events of this poem happened,
In
but
in the building. Yes.
it's like it's really interesting watching. It's really interesting to see a real life moment become a piece, captured a moment of time, which is often what poetry is, right? We're
Hmm.
often capturing these moments, and that the real life thing becomes its own kind of ekphrasis, right? And it's interesting
Yeah.
watching and like considering these things as a piece of art, or almost like a performance piece, right? For this couple to be moving around the space to these different paintings all up on each other and things like that, and in the space of all these people, it's kind of like, what does that do to the the gallery space and the space that we're in? So I thought it was really interesting, and also, I was just happy to be there. Because I could see your mind working when it was happening. I'm happy to see the product.
Yes.
This is another kind of craft question.
Hmm.
But can you talk about your broader interest in form, both in Resting Bitch Face and in your previous collection? I didn't click my heels 3 times. There have been a lot of times where I've read a poem of yours. For example, there's a poem in here called "When I Say No, the Joker Smiles." And it's not until I get to like the end of the poem that I realize that a form has been done, because you've done it so seamlessly, which I really appreciate. And I'm wondering how it feels for you, like working in these really tight forms, and how that relates back to like the project as a whole, if at all.
My introduction with form, I think, greatly influences how I continue to interact with it. So I was introduced to it by way of what I affectionately called formal boot camp, which was
Mm,
quite literally like an 8-week summer summer course with my instructor. With the first week, we met in the classroom, and he gave me a expo marker, and like quite literally on the whiteboard, we were like, okay, write a sentence in this meter, or do
mm,
this, scan this out. And I quite literally had to start hearing the meter
mm,
and those sorts of things in my head. So then we got the meter, and then each week you hand me a form and say, here's the form, here's the rules, and then here's like 2 other weird things I'm gonna throw in the box. You got a week to come
mm,
back with this form. And it kind of gave me this opportunity, like the pressure of it turned it into kind of like a game, I
hmm
think, for me. And so now form and working with form very much feels game-like to me. It feels like I'm puzzling through something. It feels like this thing that it feels like a Rubik's Cube and I have to kind of solve it, that sort
Hmm.
of thing. And I like the challenge of form. But what form also does for me, and I think that really comes through in this collection because I do revert back to prose poetry, for
Hmm.
example. So I do come out of the traditional forms quite a lot in this collection, but form sharpens my language sword.
Yeah.
When I'm, working in a sonnet and I have those syllables and I have only 14 lines, or when I'm working in a villanelle, which is, when I say no, the Joker smiles, and you have those repeating lines, for example, you have to get
Hmm.
really, really creative with how language is turning on those line
Yeah.
breaks or how we're using punctuation. Working in forms, it sharpens my poetry brain every time I have to get creative. It pushes me out of my comfort zone when we could very easily, kind of stay in our comfort zones.
Yeah.
And I'm not in school anymore. Like I'm not in class where people are pushing me in that way. So I think form is a way that I can keep myself kind of accountable when it comes to, staying kind of comfortable and stagnant versus challenging myself. Form always challenges me. And then there's the historical aspect as well, thinking about the way form has existed in history, how it exists in classrooms, how it's taught, and who sort of gets lauded as formalists, who gets taught in those environments. I keep saying the students who are in classrooms today are not the students who were
Mm-mm.
in classrooms 5 years ago, 10 years ago, are
Yeah.
not the students who were in classrooms when we were in those classrooms.
Yeah.
And so you're still going to have your students who love Shakespeare and who love the old formalists. But I think more often than not these days, you're going to have students who are going to struggle to engage with the material, are going to struggle to access the material if they don't have any examples that they can see their own lives reflected back to them, or if they don't see language that is familiar to them,
Hmm.
And so also because I love form and I want form to continue to be taught and to be a part of the way that we think about poetry. I think it's important to be writing the type of formal poetry that I want students to be
Yeah.
to have access to. And so also for that reason, I think it's always going to be important for me to be writing in form because I want those examples to be there. Like reading Patricia Smith's sonnets was critical for me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I
Absolutely.
wouldn't be the poet that I am if I hadn't found her sonnets. And so I hope there's a student out there who becomes the poet that they're supposed to be because they found, my sonnets or my pantoums or my whatever.
This is my last. It might be my last question for this whole thing, but it's also my last form question. But
Mhm.
as a lover of this form, from one to another, I am really wondering what draws you particular to the pantoum.
Mm. So the pantoum, and oh my God, I think this is what I did like my first ever craft talk on. Incredibly nerve-wracking. I was like ready to pass out the entire time. But what I love about the Pantoum, because you have those repeating lines that come super close. Like they're like right next stanza, they're like, hey, I'm back. And there's something about that challenge because it's not even about the language then, because the language is the same and there's nothing you can do about that unless you're, kind of breaking the form and playing with it. But the way that I do it, the language is there and there's that sort of whole new challenge. And I'm never as creative as I am when I am in a pantoum and I'm faced with that exact same language and I'm like,
Mm,
okay, I have to make a new sentence. This has to hit differently in
yeah.
some way, shape, or form. Like we have to break it in a new place. Punctuation's got to do some crazy stuff. Like this has to be dialogue, all of it. Like I am never as creative as I am when I work in a pantoum. It's probably the form that challenges me the most. It's probably one of the hardest forms for me to complete and get right.
Hmm.
And there's also something really rewarding about that. Like I think, a sonnet, which still has its challenges, I think that's probably like one of the easier forms that I can work in. Like I feel like I
Hmm.
I have a sonnet down to kind of a science, which feels kind of
Yeah.
crazy, but I put 3 sonnet crowns and I didn't click my heels 3 times. Like it was
Yeah.
insanity. But it was practice. Like I
Hmm.
was working that muscle until, there was some sort of like ease in the repetition.
Right.
I don't know if that'll ever happen for the Pantoum, just because I feel like that challenge always sort of like reshapes, reforms each time I approach it. And the reward when I get it right and I like feel good about it, like nothing, no other form feels as good as when I get a Pantoum as well. So it's like high challenge, high risk, but also that reward is just as high. And for that, I love her and I continue to come back to her when I can.
Yeah, and I mean, it feels rewarding as a reader as well, right? I think what's also nice about a Pantoum, it's one of those forms where you recognize pretty quickly that it's happening, as
Yeah.
opposed to maybe some of the other ones.
Yeah.
It's like when you see a Pantoum, when you hear that, you see that first two lines repeat, or whatever, you're like, oh, we're in it. And I think it's kind of a magic thing as well, as like when you see the way that sometimes I'll encounter a line in a Pantoum or one of your Pantoums, and I go, how the hell is she gonna change this line up to make it feel different? And there's that magic in the same language, same words are there, but it's like it's a
Mhm.
different sentence. Ostensibly it's a different thing happening. And so it feels just as, when talking about observed and observer, it feels just as rewarding reading it to go, oh, she did it.
Oh, that's a
She
good
got it.
point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Some of the other forms can kind of sneak up on you, like
Hmm.
in a way, like a sonnet. You can go through a sonnet and be like, oh, wait, I didn't realize that
Yeah,
was a sonnet. But because
exactly.
you have that language so soon, it's harder for a Pantoum to kind of sneak up on you. So then you got to impress the reader at this
Yeah.
point because they know the challenge now. So it's like,
Hmm.
are you gonna
Rise up to
uphold?
it.
Yeah, you're gonna rise up to it, and yeah, there's something rewarding about rising up to the challenge for the reader.
Taylor, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it. I would love if you could close us out by reading your title poem.
I would love to look at her already marked because I have been reading her as much as I can. Okay. Resting bitch face. How did you get here? What trumped up troop of slave ship sloop put you here on my doorstep in your nastiness? Alexis Pauline Gums. Spill. Something about the set of my face says slave, cracks sharp in its stank and slits you uncomfortable. And what do you make of me again? In that gas station parking lot, in the grocery aisle in its fluorescence, when you tell me to smile for you. You too pretty to be frowning makes a fugitive of me, shutters me closed for your business. You even smooth talk yourself into a lie. Say smile and mean relax, mean open, mean peel back, mean lights, camera, action, put on a show for me. Last time I smiled for a man, my teeth sparked white in the dark of his bedroom like police lights in a rearview mirror. What could I afford with that currency besides his violence? Smiling has never bought me tenderness, never tendered me a love that let my face be bitch, and ain't that what you gonna call me anyways? Whether I thaw out for you or not, don't this always end the same? The bright you coax from my mouth snuffed out as soon as I show it to you.
Eponymous is a companion segment to the O Word podcast produced by DeeSoul Carson. The music for the theme is called Canary and is provided by Esoteric Creations. Check them out on Spotify.